Hello everybody and welcome to a brand new series on the brand new F1 25 game. This season we will be doing a driver career as Johnny Pearce driving for APXGP, and we will be up against a very experienced Sonny Hayes as our teammate, and we're going to be driving for APXGP obviously, and our goal for this series to absolutely get Joshua Pearce a World Championship, and even better, we'll get APXGP a World Constructors Championship. We're going to be starting the career with the slowest car on the grid by quite some margin as well. So we got our work cut out for us, and we've only got a recognition of 48% as well against our teammates. So plenty of work to do as we head into the contract negotiations.
Finally, let's do this for real. Sorry it took so long. You know what these legal types are like? Yes, sir. No, sir. Here's 80 pages of needless jargon, sir. Anyway, believe it or not, this is my excited face. Come on, come on. Let me show you what we've got. So, all the usual stuff, merchandising, likeness, blah, 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 but the really juicy stuff is their expectation of you. They need you to challenge yourself all season, be the best you can be, dominate your teammate, become a legend. All that jazz. Now, it's over to you.
And here we are on our contract negotiations screen. We've got a couple of things that we can do here. So to start with, we're going to go for a bit of a higher target rating here. Going for 86 rated instead of the recommended 85. We also only have the option for a single season contract since we are a rookie. So we got to prove ourselves as a driver that APX wants us in the future. Obviously, I want to be trying to build ourselves a relationship with APX to try and get myself that #1 driver status, because obviously Hayes is not going to be around forever, so need to get ourselves that #1 driver status to try and help them earn themselves a World Constructors Championship.
Ah, we're signed. That sounds awesome to say. Time to go crush that target. I'll see you soon.
And we're going to go straight into some R&D now. To start with, looking at the aerodynamics, a front wing adjuster bracket upgrade, doing a standard development, which will get the part in after Australia, but only at 30% failure rate, and doing the same with the floor stiffening trays, which will also come in after Australia. We're going to jump into the durability as well, the turbo improved materials upgrade, which will be a standard development once again, because it doesn't matter, even if I rush it, it will arrive before the Japanese Grand Prix. We'll also take a look here at the weather forecast, and it's going to be intense. Just like the real-life Australian Grand Prix, all the rookies this season will have to have their first full-time F1 race in the wet, and on top of that, it's a wet qualifying as well. And speaking of qualifying, let's jump straight into the first one of the season.
And a warm welcome, everybody. We're here in the heart of Melbourne. It's Albert Park, and it's qualifying for the Australian Grand Prix.
And, well, the conditions actually look very, very treacherous. It looks like it's definitely going to be the full wet tyres going to be in use for qualifying here, and based off the weather radar, does not look like it's going to be letting up any time soon. So we'll go to the end of our first flying lap here in the new F1 game. We'll finish our first lap on the game, and it is a 36.1. So for Australia, that's very slow, but given the conditions, I feel like that's all right, and it does put us inside the top 10 for now as we run wide at turn 6 on our second flying lap. They're somehow not invalidated, so we'll continue on with the lap, and we're still finding a little bit more time as more cars cycle around the circuit, creating a tad more of a dry line. Norris goes fastest with a 33.0, so that's much faster than what we're currently doing, but we do improve and we'll maintain our P10 position at the moment. We've done a cooldown lap now, and we'll jump back into another flying lap. It's the end of our third flying lap, and you can see we've made over a second improvement, so the track is getting better as more cars go around and clear out some of that standing water around the circuit. And what I like to do here in wet qualifying sessions is just to run around, just to get a feel for the conditions and just to try and rubber in these tyres a little bit here. But towards the end of this session, I have now put on a fresh set of rubber, and we go through turn 5 and we run a little bit wide, and that is us in the fence, and we're going to abandon that lap. Don't want to end our day early here in qualifying. So, Norris is fastest in qualifying, won by a 10th to Max Verstappen. Piastri sits third, 2 tenths behind. Pearce, we're in P5, 7 tenths behind. And the gap could have come down with the changing conditions and without the mistakes costing my final lap. Hayes sits in P8, 1.3 seconds behind. And knockdown qualifying 1 is Fernando Alonso, Pierre Gasly, Esteban Ocon, Oliver Behrman, Lance Stroll, and Gabriel Bortoleto, as we now jump straight into qualifying 2. And Piastri is out of the session. The home favourite is out. And this is how it's happened. He's run into the back of Sonny Hayes. And that is a catastrophic crash at the back straight there, the fastest point of the circuit. And I'm guessing just because of the wet conditions, he just couldn't avoid him in time. But too much standing water around, and the car was just not nimble enough to avoid him. And in the end, some rear-end contact was made. And I would imagine Sonny is going to get a slap on the wrist for that one as we find the fence once again at turn 5. This time we ran a little bit wide on the entry and just touched the grass there. And that put us in the fence. And so we've had to come in for some repairs. And we're coming out for a couple of more flying laps here. And we'll come to the end of this lap. And it is going to put us P5. So that is a pretty good lap for ourselves. And it will be good enough for us to get into Q3. And so Verstappen is fastest into qualifying 2 by 200ths ahead of Charles Leclerc. Then it's Alex Albon in the Williams. He sits third, 2 tenths behind. We're 8th, 8 tenths behind, making it a Q3 on debut for APX GP. Knockdown qualifying 2. Isaac Hadjar by only 0.06 of a second. Carlos Sainz, Hayes, and confirming he does have a penalty for his role in that collision with Piastri. Antonelli, Lewis Hamilton, and Oscar Piastri not setting a lap after crashing out very early in qualifying 2. Leclerc goes fastest as they start their first flying laps here in Australia for the final part of qualifying, and we go P9 with our first lap, and we'll put in a second lap here. But unfortunately, I've kind of used up quite a bit of each of my tyres I had available here, so this will have to be my final flying lap, and we'll go half a second better, and that will put us up to P6. And in the end, that will be good enough. Charles Leclerc on pole position for the Australian Grand Prix with Yuki Tsunoda on the front row with him. The margin for pole just shy of 2 tenths of a second. Norris in third, 3 tenths behind. Pearce, we secure that P6, and a special mention to Jack Doohan for his P10 at his home Grand Prix.
The winter is over. It's time for Formula One 2025. Yes, that long break that you've all been coping with so well can now be put to the back of your minds. It's on-track action and it's off-track drama. That's what we're looking forward to. We're a stone's throw from the enormous Port Phillip Bay for today's race at the 3.28-mile Albert Park circuit. It's a bumpy racing surface here, and the 14 corners could prove especially difficult in the wet conditions. So watch out for a safety car at some point during this Grand Prix. So with the race not far away from starting, here's what today's grid rundown looks like. A fantastic effort from Charles Leclerc yesterday, and it's put him on pole. And Yuki Tsunoda completes the front row. Looking at the rest of today's grid, we have Norris, Verstappen, Alex Albon, and Pearce, Lawson, Hülkenberg, Russell, and Jack Doohan. Hadjar, Sainz, Andrea Kimi Antonelli, and Hamilton. Piastri, Fernando Alonso, Pierre Gasly, and Sonny Hayes. Ocon, Behrman, Stroll, and Gabriel Bortoleto rounds off the grid. Now it's almost time for lights out, so let's go down to the track. And joining me in the commentary box this afternoon, the First Lady of World Motorsports, Naomi Schiff. As much as I like testing, and I do love testing, and I've really enjoyed the build-up here and all the speculation, I really want to see some action. And finally today, we get some proper action on the track.
This is always such an exciting time in the season. First of all, it's the first time they'll be racing their new cars. So that's always an exciting thing for drivers to look forward to. But also, they've had a long time off during the winter break. So it's about dusting the cobwebs off, getting the rust off of their bones, and really getting their elbows out there and having some fun.
Okay, let's have a comms check, please. Radio check. Okay, here we go. I know what you can do. Don't let me down.
So the conditions aren't as wet as I was expecting them to be, considering what we were forecast to be, but the fact that we're starting on the dries is just going to make things a little bit trickier because the track does look a bit slick out there, and we're going to have to try and work out what is going to be the best. But we do switch up the strategy to start on the mediums, then go to the hards if the intermediates are not required in this race. It is light out, and away we go. We start our APX GP career mode for Season 1, and it is a very good start from ourselves. We're already looking to go around the outside of Max Verstappen to get ourselves into P3, and we do get third position away from Verstappen, the reigning world champion, and we sit ourselves into third. We're not going to attack Leclerc, and we're safe from Max Verstappen. And further behind, it looks like people are still trying to find their own little piece of real estate. Norris sits in fifth, then it's Alex Albon, Nico Hulkenberg, Jack Doohan has already made up a few positions. He finds himself in P8, then it's Liam Lawson and George Russell behind Gasly and Sainz going side by side, but it is the Alpine of Pierre Gasly who is on the intermediates tyres. So we've got dry tyres. We definitely know we've got medium and hard tyre compounds out there, and now Doohan and Pierre Gasly both on the intermediate tyres. So we've got 3 compounds out there at the moment on the circuit. So very interesting to see how all of these strategies are going to play out. Doohan will continue to go around the outside of Nico Hulkenberg, which will give him the inside. DRS is enabled here. At the moment, it's not quite wet enough for the FIA to determine it to be too unsafe. Lawson is the next one to look like he's wanting to get by Nico Hulkenberg here. So it looks like he's possibly struggling in maybe a bit of a straight line, because so far the 2 overtakes we've seen on him have been in DRS zones. So that could be a weakness of the Sauber, or just a bad setup that Nico is currently running. And it looks like he could be very much under attack from George Russell very soon. And we've had quite the moment on the exit there. And so we run a little bit wide and have to catch a slide. But it's going to be Norris who's trying to get himself now ahead of Max Verstappen. These two had quite the rivalry in the F1 2024 season in real life, and they're battling once again here in the game, on track in our alternate universe here, and Norris will take that P4 away. But you can see in the background there, big defensive moves are being pulled by Alex Albon there to try and stop Doohan from getting through on him. Doohan will look to go around the outside. He gets squeezed up onto the AstroTurf. Is he able to keep the move? And he does go up into P6. So these intermediates are actually looking very quick at the moment, considering it's the Alpines that are able to get all these moves done so far. We get our first objective of the series, and we need to get ourselves past Charles Leclerc. And you can see there, Norris and Verstappen battling each other. They've actually got themselves now outside of that DRS zone from ourselves. So we're a little bit safe here. So I'm very much happy at the moment just to sit in the DRS of Charles Leclerc, as much as Mark wants me to try and get by Charles Leclerc here. I reckon the best point of attack here is to stay behind Charles Leclerc, even though we're dropping away from Yuki Tsunoda. But I feel like we just don't have the straight line speed to be able to keep up with Tsunoda or keep Charles Leclerc behind us. And the battles are continuing here. Liam Lawson versus George Russell. Russell will look to go around the outside, and he'll have to go around the outside. Once again, it's a really fast sweeping corner in the dry, and you can't really go side by side. But when it's a bit greasy and a little bit wet, you can go side by side. The car's sliding around quite a lot. They'll continue to go side by side, but we jump on board with ourselves because we have dropped off the back of Charles Leclerc. Leclerc's put in an absolute blinder of a lap in front of us. We didn't really go too much slower, but we have lost all of that time to Leclerc, so he's really started picking up the pace, and I'm starting to struggle a little bit on these mediums. I'm starting to think maybe the intermediates is the way to go, but I kind of want to hang it out until at least our first pit stop here before I make the switch to the intermediates. But you'll see here, now that I don't have the DRS from Leclerc, I am very vulnerable in the straight line. Norris and Verstappen both go by us down this back straight through the fast chicane now, and it looks like Verstappen will be trying to line up a move here on Norris, and Mark wants us to try and get the place back, but I just don't have the pace at the moment in these slightly changing conditions, as it's starting to drift a little bit more onto the wet side of things. Doohan, though, is very much on the back of us now, and he looks very racy as his teammate Pierre Gasly gets himself now up into P7. So both Alpines now P6 and P7 on the intermediate tyres, so they are proving the Inters are definitely a tyre that we should be considering. Piastri now gets himself up back inside the top 10 after starting all the way down in P16. So an absolute terrible start for him, but he's able to get himself all the way back up into the points. Now, Duan, he does get by us now. He's used the DRS and he's got by us. We had no way of defending that. That was just, yeah, that was just us being a bit of a sitting duck there. And in the end, we lose P5 and drop down to P6, where we started the Grand Prix. Piastri is continuing to make moves through the field, and he'll find himself now up into P9 in his McLaren, and he'll be chasing down Alex Albon now. But up ahead, it's Duan and Max Verstappen. They're battling each other, but it's going to be Jack Duan who gets the better of him and gets himself now up into third position on those intermediate tyres. We get the past objective of passing Charles Leclerc, but that is because he has made his first pit stop here. So it looks like the Ferrari is possibly on a 2-stop here, stopping very early here in the Grand Prix. I don't think they're going to try and make a 20-lap stint on the hard tyres, so it will be interesting to see how the Ferrari strategy, as we get a little bit of a tap there from Pierre Gasly. I tried to shut the door on him, but it looks like he just had a little bit of his nose there and a little bit of contact there, no foul. Further down the field, though, Carlos Sainz, he's trying to get himself up inside the top 10, but a puff of smoke coming out the back of his Williams, and his first race with the Grove squad has come to a very early end on only lap 10, and that is him out and done here in Australia, and that is actually going to bring out a VSC. So I'm going to use this opportunity, considering we're so close to the pit lane, to come in, and we're going to box for the intermediate tyres. I reckon at the moment, Mark keeps telling me that it's and they don't know what's faster, but I'm looking at that Alpine and seeing how much pace and how much grip they've got, and I want that. I feel like I'm losing the grip on these mediums, so we're going to box for the intermediates, and Max Verstappen also comes in, but interestingly enough, he's boxed onto the hard, so he hasn't made the switch to the wets yet. We do close the gap just slightly, though, heading out of the pit lane, and we'll rejoin in P10, and so as we now do an order check here while we're under VSC, it's Yuki Tsunoda leading the way ahead of Norris, and then Jack Doohan on the podium. Then it's Pierre Gasly, the two Alpines, third and fourth. Then it's Alex Albon, Liam Lawson, Nico Hulkenberg, Esteban Ocon, Max Verstappen, and Joshua Pearce rounding out the top 10. Then it is Charles Leclerc, Oscar Piastri, Kimi Antonelli, Fernando Alonso, Oliver Behrman, George Russell, Lewis Hamilton, Isaac Hadjar, Lance Stroll, Gabriel Bortoleto, and our teammate Sonny Hayes all the way down in P21. He's having an absolute shocker of a day. I don't know what's going on, but he is just struggling on the pace, and he immediately off the start of the race just dropped through the field, and so it's not a great sign for Sonny at this rate in the season. Our race leader, though, Yuki Tsunoda, is being followed in by Lando Norris into the pit lane, and he will also go onto another set of hard compound tyres. So it doesn't look like the Red Bull nor the McLaren there want to go onto the wet weather compound tyres just yet. They reckon it's still dry enough for the slick tyres, and we'll have to have a look to see where this rejoin is going to put them, because there's a big pack of cars coming according to the Delta, and is this going to be a bit messy? It is. He nearly collides with Oscar Piastri, and you can see that we've also lost a position to Charles Leclerc, so we're currently now sitting P8, and we've now found ourselves onto the back of this battle pack that we were just talking about, where Tsunoda had the near miss exiting the pit lane. Verstappen is looking to go around the outside of Esteban Ocon, and he will get that move completed, and we've got an absolute blinder of an exit, and we will go down the inside of Charles Leclerc, and so will Oscar Piastri. He'll follow us through. He will get himself now up into 8th position. The Ferrari not looking too good at the moment as he pulls into P9, and Ocon now finds himself in the lane to make one of his pit stops. We've got our next objective of the Grand Prix, and we need to try and stay ahead of Oscar Piastri, which I feel like we've lost the DRS to Max Verstappen. I feel like this is set in stone. We're going to fail this pretty much on this straight. I'm looking at that Delta drop massively, 3 tenths, 2 tenths, and it's only a tenth and a half, and he's side by side, and he's gone through. He's gone through. So our straight line is definitely an issue, as Oscar Piastri has had an engine failure right in front of us, and he nearly rejoins into the side of us, ending both of our days. But luckily, we avoid him. But Piastri out as he's had an engine failure. So that is 2 Mercedes power units gone in this Grand Prix, up in a puff of smoke. And will this also be another VSC? And it is going to be another virtual safety car. So our second VSC of the Grand Prix, and this time I will not come into the pit lane, but it was very cool to see that it came out in nearly the exact same spot as the first one. We're green racing once again, and Yuki Tsunoda's not wasting any time. He is looking to try and get himself past the Ferrari of Charles Leclerc, and he does manage to get it done going into the fast chicane, and that puts him up into P7. But we've had a really good run here onto the back of Max Verstappen. Verstappen's going for the move on Liam Lawson. He goes around the outside. We're going to try and follow him through, but Lawson gives us the squeeze. We were already committed on the brakes. We couldn't brake any harder, and we make slight contact with the wall, but we out-traction Liam Lawson, and so we'll get the move done anyway, a corner later. But, oh, that could have ended badly. Very, very badly. We find ourselves now up into P5 as Pierre Gasly boxes from the lead of the Grand Prix, and he goes on to another set of intermediates. So the Alpines definitely finding that the Inters are the faster tyre for them, as Charles Leclerc, he's now looking to get himself past Liam Lawson. So I was saying just before, the Ferraris weren't looking too good on their race pace, but there is something going on with Liam Lawson. He is dropping dramatically down the field. He loses the position to Charles Leclerc around the outside, and behind you can see the Pierre Gasly on those intermediates. He is making up some places. He is already trying to go around the outside of Lando Norris. He will get the inside at the final corner. That is going to be him now up into P9. Norris, though, he could be vulnerable to George Russell, but Doohan, he is also just coming outside of the pits, so he is coming out all the way ahead in P5, ahead of this giant battle pack. So this battle pack could really cost Pierre Gasly a lot of time here, so it's very good that Doohan has come out ahead of this battle pack. But once again, also, he's come out on the intermediate tyre, so the Alpine is definitely finding these Inters to be the way to go. We get another objective of the Grand Prix, and this time we need to set a nice fast lap time. We're on the Inters. We're slowly getting this gap from Verstappen down a little bit as he finds himself stuck behind Alex Albon, but stuck no more. He'll be looking to the outside at the end of the DRS straight, and is he going to be able to get the move done? He will. Around the outside, gets the move done, but we've got such good traction at the moment as the track is slowly, very slowly getting more wet, and we also follow him through on Alex Albon, and that is us now up into P2, and this is a genuine P2 as well. Everyone has been making pit stops, so this is us in P2. Could we be trying to go for a win at the Australian Grand Prix on our race debut for the debut of APXGP? It's going to be an absolute miracle, but we also pass our objective of setting a good lap time there, even though we made the overtake on Alex Albon during that lap as well. So our pace is actually looking really good, but we have to keep an eye behind us because Jack Doohan is on those really fresh intermediate tyres, and those Alpines have looked rapid all day so far in these changing conditions. And as I say that, Gasly gets himself now up into P6 ahead of Lewis Hamilton. Hamilton immediately under attack by Lando Norris. Norris will look to the outside, and is he going to be able to get this move done? He will get the move done up into P7. Hamilton drops now down to P8, back on board with ourselves here. We have brought the gap down to only 0.4 of a second, and DRS is now disabled. So the FIA have now seen the track conditions, and they agree that it is a bit too wet now for the DRS, which is actually going to play against me now because I don't have anything to try and help me stay with Max Verstappen with our straight line deficit that we currently got. As Gasly makes it into P5, he'll look to go around the outside of Charles Leclerc at P2, and that is the job done and dusted. Gasly P5, Leclerc P6, back on board with ourselves here. We've got a really good run on Max Verstappen, but Verstappen is so wise when it comes to his racing tactics, and you can see the Doohan, he is right here as well. We've got a 3-car scrap for the lead of the Grand Prix. We're going to have to try and catch Max Verstappen napping. That is the only way I'm going to be able to get by him, and so we do just that. We dive it down the inside at turn 4, and that is definitely a place you don't see overtaking, but we get it done on these Inters while Max is still on the hards, and it looks like he could possibly now lose a position to Jack Doohan as well. Doohan on the slide, he'll get it to the inside, and on those intermediates, he'll get himself now up into P2. Max Verstappen will try and fight it, but he tucks in behind. And is Max Verstappen now trying to go for P3? No, he's coming into the pit lane. Is he now going to be coming in for the intermediate tyres? He has waved the white flag. He realises the conditions are changing. Is this going to be him throwing away a podium, or is this going to be a masterclass from Red Bull? It is the intermediate tyres going onto his car as he'll now exit the pit lane, and he's going to be dropping down to P5, exiting the pits as we now are defending from Jack Doohan. This is for a win. This is for a win at the Australian Grand Prix on our debut. Can we deny a first-time Australian win on home soil? But we've got a new issue thrown at us. Our tyres are cooked. They are cooked. Our rears are at 61 and 50, and our front left is at 29%. Well, they are absolutely being tortured at the moment, but we've only got a couple of laps to go, and I really, really don't want to give away an opportunity to try and win this Grand Prix. We use a bit of battery. We get back up to the inside of Jack Doohan. We're side by side as we come into the braking zone, and we're a bit early onto the brakes compared to Jack, but we get the exit on him, and we maintain the race lead just for now. And heading down the main straight once again. This is now starting lap 23, so 7 laps to go in this Grand Prix. We defend from Jack Doohan once again. We maintain the lead again. And this is going to be a real game of cat and mouse for the remainder of the Grand Prix, and just see how long I can try and defend from Jack here. As he looks to our outside this time, we're side by side as we come up to the fast chicane, and we continue to go side by side. A really bad time for Mark to try and talk to us. I don't even know what he said. I'm too focused on maintaining this lead, and now we're vulnerable to yet another dive from Jack here. We get on the brakes. He's later on the brakes once again into this zone here, but we get the better traction, and we'll maintain the lead once again. We'll take a little bit of a breather here, and we'll take a look here at Charles Leclerc. He's looking to get himself now up inside the top 5, and to do that, he's going to have to go around the outside of Alex Albon there in the Williams, and he will do just that. Behind, though, Yuki Tsunoda, he's got himself past Lando Norris, and he's going to get the traction and get himself by Alex Albon as well, and that puts him now up into P6. 2 passes, 1 corner. Excellent work there from Yuki, but it's Lando Norris now who's looking to try and get himself ahead of Albon. And he just looks like he is struggling a big time. So he'll try and squeeze Norris all the way to the inside. But it is just no match for the pace of that McLaren. And Norris goes up into P7. Albon P8. And he's now got a Ferrari coming up very quickly behind him. Meanwhile, we are still trying to defend from Jack Doohan. But this time, he has got by a bit sooner, and so we have to pull in behind him. And I just can't get the run on him. Our tyre wear is now into the red. It is now red, and we're now questioning whether if we can actually make it to the end of the Grand Prix. But my instinct says we should keep going, because it's an opportunity for us to get a podium on debut, which does not happen very, very often in a Formula 1, and what a way it would be to kick off our campaign with a podium here in Australia, as Russell now gets himself ahead of Alex Albon. Max Verstappen was the latest driver to come into the box here to grab a fresh set of intermediates, and it is proving to be the right call here as he now goes down the inside of Pierre Gasly, and this puts him now up onto the podium. So Max Verstappen back into the podium position that he sacrificed to make that pit stop, so definitely worth the extra stop. As Hadjar gets quite the slide coming out of the corner there, and he will still get the traction over Alex Albon. So Albon struggling so much, he now finds himself outside the top 10. Hadjar on debut will find himself now up into P10, and this is what I'm talking about with the tyre wear. We're now up to 83% on the tyres on the back, and it's now gone to 100. Is that a puncture? Have we just got ourselves a puncture on the back straight? And we do have a puncture, and it throws us into the fence at the fastest point of the circuit, and that is an absolute massive crash to end our Grand Prix. So the puncture actually happened a bit sooner than I thought, but it went pop right there, and that was when it fully let go and threw us into the fence. There was just no saving that. We were still full throttle trying to work out whether if that actually was a puncture or not, or whether if the tyre wear was just sitting at 100%. But sure enough, the tyre ended up having a catastrophic failure going down the fastest part of the circuit, and wow, we were 3 laps away from P2 at the Australian Grand Prix. On debut, I'll keep saying that, on debut we could have got ourselves a P2, but nonetheless, it's a DNF.
And it's victory today for Jack Doohan.
Well, they kept us guessing during pre-season testing. We all wondered who it was going to be, and to have them drawn out here today, that they are the ones to beat, just goes to show that all the work they put in has really counted.
There's room for 3 on their podium, but only ever 1 right at the top. Let the celebrations begin.
Well, what a Grand Prix. It was a very good strategy from the team, starting on the mediums for the start and not the hards. Probably wasn't quite ready for intermediates at that stage. Took advantage of the VSC to switch to the inters once it was clear that they were the fastest, and Alpine showed us that they had fantastic pace. Unfortunately, our tyre wear wasn't quite there to make it to the finish line, and the puncture ended our race. But Jack Doohan wins the Australian Grand Prix on his first attempt, and so becomes the first Australian to win on home soil. Verstappen and Gasly join him on the podium, and that is also a double Alpine podium. Rounding out the top 10, Lando Norris, Yuki Tsunoda, Charles Leclerc, Lewis Hamilton, George Russell, Isaac Hadjar, points on debut, and Hulkenberg also scoring points for Sauber. A disappointing race for Hayes, finishing last on the road. Pearce, Piastri, and Sainz, we are non-finishers in today's Grand Prix. Doohan leads the Drivers' Championship by 7 points to Max Verstappen. Gasly in third, 10 points behind. Hayes P19 and Pearce P20 with no points. Alpine leading the Constructors' Championship by 12 points to Red Bull. Ferrari third with 26 points behind. APXGP P11 with no points. And for our teammate rivalry after the first Grand Prix, we're still drawing. We've got 2 out of 6 done, so we've got to keep working at it. We've got to prove to ourselves we are better than our veteran teammates, but we've got to keep going. The driver ratings, experience, racecraft, and pace lose points. Awareness and focus gain some points for an overall level of 82. And with the very large potential that we showed in the opening race, and also with setting ourselves such high expectations with our driver ratings, we are at 49% recognition against Sonny Hayes. And back at home base, it's a very quick turnaround for the Chinese Grand Prix. We got a lot of R&D points to use, and for the next episode, it is the Chinese Grand Prix. So if you did enjoy this episode, please make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you when we head to Shanghai.